Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hey, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. This is Joe Slepsky, the host of the only podcast where we go over every single episode of G.I. Joe, a Real American Hero, in sequential order and comment on a mystery science style. I am excited this week to follow up with part 2 of our big D-Day at Alcatraz two-parter, except this time we've got a new guest for you, ladies and gentlemen. We've got a new friend of mine, a gentleman who I enjoy quite a bit, and frankly, I've enjoyed his work now for almost 20 years and never even known it, because his name is Carley, and he is the man in the suit for a lot of geek culture things that you guys may or may not have seen. And I know there's one of them that you've absolutely seen. He was a werewolf in Underworld. He played the Predator in Batman Dead End, which was the web short that was released maybe like 10, 15 years ago. And most importantly, everyone, this is the man in the suit, Godzilla, from 1999's Godzilla. The Roland Emmerich and production starring Matthew Broderick. This is the man in the suit, Godzilla himself. Welcome to Joe on Joe, Carley.
Hello, everybody. How are you?
We're great, Kurt. Thanks for joining the show, man.
You are welcome. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you on. You're a monster, a Hollywood monster.
Yes, I am.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm probably the most interesting person you will ever meet. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I agree. And humble.
Yes.
And humble. And you keep it humble. I like that. So you were the man in the suit for Godzilla in 99.
Yes. Actually, to be honest, it was 1998.
Or 98. It was 98's Godzilla. Okay.
98.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. I don't want to take credit for someone who did Godzilla in 1999.
That's true. Now you, I was looking at IMDb. That's like your first major credit, right? Or
first major film
credit?
really. Yeah.
And how did that come about? Like what were the steps to get there?
The Reader's Digest version is I was living in New York and I got a phone call that a casting person in Los Angeles called me and said the producers of Independence Day are looking for someone to be Godzilla, and we understand you're 6'3", and so I convinced them to have me fly out and meet the producers.
Mm-hmm.
And after a couple weeks of auditions and meetings, I was very, very blessed to get a job working on the film. So I moved out here to work on the movie.
That's so cool. So what would the auditions be like for wearing a suit? Is it your motion, your body movement, what kind of physicality did you bring to the role of Godzilla?
Right. Well, in the audition process, we had to sign a non-disclosure agreement because at one point, when they got it down to one of three guys, they weren't sure who they're going to choose. They showed us a maquette of what the new Godzilla would look like, and this was at the time very top secret, and which gave us new ideas about how it could move. And so, and then like a few days later or a week later, when at the final audition, the audition was, start and just do your best Godzilla, however you think he moves. And the producers were like, we don't know how it moves. We want you to tell us how it moves.
Right.
So the audition, after you did that, and then it kind of became jumping through hoops in terms of, do what you just did, but do it as low as you can to the ground. Okay, now do that again, but do it as high as you can with your torso as high off the ground as you can, but still maintain a lizard-like movement. So that's really what the audition was like after your first go-round of doing, here's what I think it looks like, and then it was, do it this way, do it that way, twice as fast, do it as slow as you can. So that's what the auditions were like.
Wow, so like 3 weeks of that, and you're out here in LA at the whole time. You stayed out here, or did you fly back and forth?
I was staying with friends.
Yeah,
I was staying with some very, very patient friends, because initially I thought I'm going to be here like 3 days.
Yeah.
And that'll be it. And it turned into 2-3 weeks.
So what happens when you get the call that you got the job? Like, what was that moment for you? What did that mean to you?
It was interesting. I was home in New York, and the producer called me, and he said, "Yeah, we want you to come and work on the movie with us. Is that something you'd like to do?" And I said, "Sure." Because I was just kind of shocked.
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, you don't sound very happy. I said, no, I'm happy. It's just I'm a little shocked. He goes, okay, I understand. And I said, but do I have to move to L.A.? And he goes, well, yeah, we're going to need you here. And I said, that's fine. I just needed to hear it from like an authority figure.
Yeah.
You know? That's what the phone call was.
And
like.
is that what brought you to LA permanently, or
Yes.
did you then go back to New York? Or
No, I took that as a sign. I had been living in New York for 10 years and
acting?
trying to failing at it. But when I got to New York, I was in Little Shop of Horrors in the off-Broadway production.
Absolutely great.
Yeah.
What role were you?
I was the plant. I
Love it.
Yeah, I was the plant manipulator.
Okay. So
And-
were you inside of it?
Oh yeah.
How did that work? What was the structure like? Were your arms the mouth, or what?
Well, there's 4 plants in the show, and I did 3 of the plants. The first plant you do is just a potted plant that's set on a windowsill, and that is just like a hand puppet. You put your hand on the bottom of the plant, of the pot of the plant, and then you manipulate the plant. And then the second plant is the first plant that talks, and that is where you're seated in a plant pot, and they put the Audrey 2 on top of you, and then you use your. The way I did it, I used your left arm and hand as the lower jaw and your right arm and hand as the upper jaw. And you were safety belted into a seat in that potted plant so you wouldn't fall over. And then you moved your arms in time to the voice of the actor doing the voice of the plant. And then if you have not fallen asleep yet,
No, this is fascinating to me. For one, I love Little Shop of Horrors. I've never seen it live. I've seen the movie.
Oh.
I've seen the original movie.
Right.
I got the soundtrack. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful piece.
Right.
It's absolutely great. So this is aming to me.
Okay, and
Yeah.
then in the second act, the big plant that really eats people whole. There's 2 working positions in that plant. There's one where the plant is on the ground, and you are kind of squatting in there. And there was a bar that was right in front of your face, and I would hold that with my right hand, and then on the bottom jaw was a strap going down the center of the jaw, and you would use your body weight to move the plant around back and forth and like a panning back and forth to talk to the actors. And so you would kind of push a little bit on the bottom jaw and move the upper jaw with this bar that's in front of your face. And then when the plant stood up, you use your left hand, you grabbed that strap and you picked up the plant, and then you sat it on your thighs. There were thigh cutouts in the bottom jaw.
Interesting.
And then you would rest that on your the weight of the plant on your thighs, and you were kind of crouching a little bit, and then you just use the same motion to make the jaws move and stuff.
That's cool. That's
Yeah.
really cool. Do you know? So, have they updated any of the because it's still in production everywhere? Do they still use like that design, like a set
I
design
think so.
for it?
It's Marty Robinson was the guy who created the plant, and what's I think is genius about it is the simplicity of it. It's like when I got in there the first time, I was like, oh, it's really simple. And I mean that as a compliment. It's just because it's easy to repair. There's not a lot that can go wrong, but it works perfectly. So I think that's part of the genius of the way Marty created
That's
it.
great. Have you ever gone back and performed in it post
Yeah.
that original run?
Yeah, I did. I did the show in New York, and I was hired as an understudy, and I went on a few times, and I was hired within the last year of the show before it closed, because it closed in I think October or November of 1987, because it had run for 5 years.
Yeah.
So I got on the show when it was been running for 4 years, and then after the show closed on off Broadway, then I believe the rights were opened up to regional theaters, and so then I had a kind of mini career going around the country and performing the show for civic operas and a lot of summer
Very
theaters.
cool.
Going to Massachusetts and San Jose and Oklahoma City and Houston, Texas and Muskegon, Michigan, and place in New Jersey. So yeah,
That's really fascinating.
yeah.
So let's going back to Godzilla. You you show up. Do they do a full body cast of you to fit the suit around you, or how, like what was that process?
For stuff like that, they'll do a body cast of you, and then the suit is made for you, and it is boy, it's a very well fitting suit. It's made for you.
Is it?
Yeah. So they make a mold of you, and then they kind of make like a mannequin of you out of that mold.
Yeah.
And then they slap clay on that, and then the guy starts sculpting, and then they sculpt the creature on your body, on your mannequin, as it were. And then molds are made, and then those molds are turned into like foam latex pieces, and then those are sewn by very, very talented men and women into a suit. And that's not including all the stuff that goes under the suit, the corsets you have to wear, and all the support structure for under the suit.
How heavy was it at the end of the day?
Here's the deal. I also played Baby Godzillas in the movie also.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And the suits are made as light as they can make them. But the challenge with that costume was your chest and head were so far over your feet that you had to really find a sweet spot where...
Yeah, because his tail would balance him, so he leans forward quite a bit.
Right,
yeah.
And so, the suit weighs X amount of pounds. I honestly don't know how much it weighed. But it was made as light as it could be, because you were also carrying electronics and batteries to run those electronics. And the suit's going to weigh however much it weighs. But it was, for that particular job, it was the body position that was the real challenge.
So you walk on set the first day, and just a massive scale model of New York. Is that what's waiting for you?
Yeah,
or?
we were the 1/24th scale Godzilla. So yes, everything was 1/24th scale. And funny story, which I've told before, but when I was in 5th grade, I went to a matinee of Godzilla versus the Smog Monster.
Awesome.
And as I was sitting there watching Godzilla walk through the miniature set, I said to myself, I'm going to do that one day.
Oh, no way.
And then about 25 years later, I'm in a Godzilla suit on a, and I was, oh, wow. I had that memory come back to me, like, oh my gosh,
that's wonderful. Where did you grow up?
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
That's great.
Right, yeah. But yeah, they had sets built, and little streets with little street lamps and little mailboxes and cars. And
is the destruction pre-planned per se, or is there an element of, okay, just swat at that building and whatever happens to the miniature happens in the miniature? Or did they know that this corner of the building was going to break off, kind of thing? Like, how much of it was you just being destructive, and how much was it was pre-planned down to the...
Oh, everything was pre-planned. Yeah, it was. They had some really incredible model makers on that, and so there would be, like, Kurt, you need to hit it right here. Not up, not too high, not too low, right here, and you can see where it's scored.
Mm-hmm.
There was no just have at it. It was all pre-planned.
And how long was the shoot?
Oh gosh, I started working on that with fittings and stuff in January, and I was done in December, so it was like a year.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's huge.
Yeah, because we did the fittings, and then the training, and the Baby Godzillas, then the Mother Godzilla, and motion capture also for it, which really wasn't used in the film ultimately, I guess. But it was a whole year.
Yeah. That was just a huge movie. That was absolutely a huge movie.
Yeah.
Like, it was. Do you remember X-Files even peed on a Godzilla poster in their movie because you guys were going up against? Do you remember that?
I don't. I never.
Yeah,
but it makes sense.
There was in the X-Files movie, because they were going up head to head with each other,
right.
and Mulder goes into the alley. I got Muller in my mind. Mulder goes into the alley, and he takes a whiz, and it's on a poster for your Godzilla movie because the two big massive franchises were colliding.
All right,
and I absolutely remember going to see it, and I just loved it. I thought it was just a wonderful big loud spectacle.
Right.
Yeah. And
right.
I think it's been much maligned over the years.
Yeah.
Let's dive an arrow right at the heart of that conversation.
Okay.
I think it's been much maligned. I think it's much better than people give it credit for.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. I will. I'll let the world decide. the public can decide what they want about the movie.
Well, you shared an anecdote with me of watching one of the more recent Godzilla movies where they pitted Godzilla against every iteration of Godzilla, like the Toho Godzilla versus all the Godzillas. And if you do you mind sharing that story a little bit?
So I was at the Egyptian watching this film here in Los Angeles, and the version of the Godzilla that I played was in a scene, and it was killed. And when it was killed, the audience broke out in applause. And I sat there with just one small tear rolling down my cheek.
That's so touching.
Yes.
It's so touching. And I think it's unfair. I think it's unfair because I think they were going for trying to hit the U.S. sensibilities. You know,
Right.
I mean, Godzilla is very specific to Japan,
Right.
And there's absolutely obviously a massive crossover appeal to the U.S.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why Godzilla, it took that long to make an American version of Godzilla because there is something that needs to be translated, I think, for American audience to connect to it. And that's what they were doing with that. They were really trying to find that sweet spot.
Yeah.
And I thought, for the most part, they hit it, you know? I thought it was great. It was fun.
That makes me feel good that you enjoyed it. Yes.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, it's great. Now, so because you're on the set, did you work with either Emmerich, or did you work with Matthew Broderick? Like, did you work with any of those guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Because especially in the scenes with that took place in Madison Square Garden.
Okay. Oh, because you were the baby and that
Godzilla,
was human size. Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah.
So they all were, running away from us or running through us or something.
Matthew
like that.
Broderick seems like a real nice dude. I don't know.
Not
looking for dirt. He's one of those guys that I would just go, I bet you he's a nice dude.
I have no dirt on anybody. Everyone was very nice. Honestly, I didn't interact with them much because I was, under 2
Except
inches.
to go, "Roar."
Exactly. I have no dirt on anybody. Everyone was very nice.
Well, that's great. So you've also played werewolves in the Underworld films.
Yes, the first three. Yeah.
Kevin Graveau shops occasionally. He'll show up at Golden Apple Comics out here.
Okay.
So
yes,
he's great. He's a
Kevin.
massive presence.
Yes.
Yes, he is. A really nice dude, though.
Yeah,
every time I've
absolutely.
met him,
Sweet guy.
I
Sweet
love
guy.
those movies are so much fun. They're just fun. They get real twisted in their mythology, like just of this connects to that, connects to that, connects to that, the continuity of it. But at the end of the day, it's werewolves fighting vampires.
Right.
Done. I'm in.
Yes.
I'm in. That's it. And Kate Beckinsale is a delight.
She's very nice.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you also played, and we mentioned this up top. It's not a feature, but it was on the web, and it was 15 years ago, right? It was like
quite possibly the greatest short film ever made.
It's amazing. It's called Batman Dead End.
Yes.
If you guys aren't familiar with it, you need to Google it and watch it. It is a fan film made with really high production values. And you played, basically it's Batman meets the Predator in an alley.
Right.
And you played the Predator.
Yes.
And who played Batman?
Clark Bartram.
Clark Bartram.
Yes.
And he looks amazing. Looks like it's a fantastic Batman costume. The Predator costume is amazing.
Yes.
And the fight, it's shot impeccably.
Yes.
It's really great. How did that come about?
Right. I think it was in early 2003. I got a friend recommended me to go and audition for Sandy Calora, the man who is one of the creative forces behind it, him and the producers. So I went and auditioned, and they gave me the part. And I knew nothing about what was happening with this movie. I knew that there was Batman in it, and there was Predator, and there was Alien, and the Joker. And
that's right. There was more to it.
Yeah. So I'm like, well, where are you going to get a Predator costume? Like, all right. Like, I had, and when I went to the shop for my first fitting, I saw how good the Predator costume was. Like, this is, movie quality Predator costume.
Where did they get it? Was it from the movie?
I believe they sculpted the suit itself. I believe the Predator helmet and dreads were from the original mold.
Awesome.
Because I know people. I believe that is correct. And so I knew I had to, wow, this is serious. And I went outside and I was talking to the director, and this is when people were starting to shoot stuff digitally and stuff. I said, so what are you going to shoot this on? He goes, 35, dude. We're shooting at 35 millimeter. And so it was We rehearsed the fight, Clark and I, with the stunt coordinator for 8 weeks.
Wow.
We would get together once a week and go over that fight because Sandy was very blunt. He says, "I do not have the time to waste when we're shooting this. So you guys have to know the fight backwards and forwards. When I say go to this part of the fight, you both go and we start shooting." So we rehearsed the fight for 8 weeks, and when we got to shooting, shooting was. I'm glad that we knew the fight that well because then you add the elements of the rain, and it's dark. And Clark has contacts in his eyes, which I think it obscured his vision a little bit. I know that my helmet, because I was so hot under the helmet, my visor that I looked out of would fog up. And so there's a couple points in the film I can show you where, like, I have no idea where I'm swinging or kicking. And Clark was great to work with because he knew the fight as well as I did. But I have no idea where I am. I know that this arm goes here, and then I turn.
You didn't really have the heat sensitive vision that a predator does? You don't have predator vision?
Spoiler. No.
Spoiler alert! Oh no, you're ruining the illusion.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool, man.
Yeah.
And that got really well received.
It was well received. We premiered down at Comic-Con back, I think it was 2003, and it was a big hit. And that was kind of at a time, I don't know all the histories of fan films, but there weren't a lot. I don't remember there being a lot of high quality fan films.
There weren't
back then.
Yeah.
I mean, there was Troops by Kevin Rubio, which is brilliant,
absolutely brilliant.
And there was some Star Trek, fan films. But this was, this is I think it's for one of the early fan films. It's pretty good. I think it's pretty good.
Oh, I think it's real good. Yeah. I think it's really good. So speaking of Comic-Con, now this episode is actually airing, I believe, the week after Comic-Con, but you were just down there.
I was just down there, yes.
So listeners, if anyone here is listening and you were at Comic-Con, I hope that you stopped by the Vikings for the History Channel, the Vikings attraction exhibit promotion.
Yeah.
Because you were playing a guy called a Seer.
That is correct. Yes, I was playing a character from the show called the Seer, and we were having fun with attendees of the con, and they would come in and ask us questions about their future, and then we would be appropriately vague about what the gods wanted them to do or what they shouldn't do or what their fate said would happen to them, and why are you questioning your fate? Why are you doing this?
I love the live action role play aspect of all that.
Right.
This is awesome, Kurt. I'm so excited. If you guys want to find out more about Kurt, go to his website. Go to kurtcarley.com. That's Kurt with a K and Carley, Carley with a C. You find his website, go to IMDb, check him out as long as you're on the internet. Check me out at Joe on Joe Pod. That's on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Send me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com. Let me know if you love the show, if you love Joe and Joe, if you want to be a guest on Joe and Joe, reach out. Tell me my show's terrible. Whatever you do, go to iTunes, leave me a review. That always helps. And finally, if you guys want to help support the show, go to patreon.com/joeonjoepod. And you can see how you can help support the show for only $1. You can show some love. Or for $3, you get full access to Joe on Joe Illustrated, which is our podcast that we talk about every single episode of the comic book in excruciating detail. You guys have heard some of those episodes, and I hope you enjoyed them. We're well into like 26 or 27 by now, so it's pretty great. We're having a lot of fun. So, Kurt, we're going to get into the show, but before we start, real quick, what's your history with G.I. Joe? Were you a fan growing up? So you would have been like the 12-inch era, right? The larger format guys?
I guess I would have, yes.
Yeah.
I coveted G.I. Joe as a child, but that was not going to happen. My parents were not going to get mixed up in that whole world of that.
They were too button-down Pennsylvanian.
Right. But I can remember looking at the Sears Christmas catalog, and they would have these lavish, at least it appeared to me, these lavish G.I. Joe, like, dioramas set up.
Yeah.
And these boys playing with, like, G.I. Joe with the orange scuba suit on, with the scuba tanks, and they would have like the sand around a mirror, which would represent water, and the jeeps and the tanks and everything, and the lifelike hair with the kung fu grip, all that stuff. But it was not meant to be for me. But I certainly would have I would have had one if I could have.
Yeah, yeah. I'm right now. I'm thinking with your experience playing the monster. I think you'd make a wonderful Cobra Law agent.
Yes.
Like perhaps Nemesis Enforcer.
Okay.
Just listeners, you guys know what I'm talking about. He's a massive, really tall dude. He's kind of Predator-like,
Right.
and he's got giant claws that come out the back of his arms and huge bat wings that he can fly with, and he's kind of like snake-like. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, guys, picture Kurt as Nemesis Enforcer.
Great.
Casting you right now. Well, this is great. So we're going to watch D-Day at Alcatraz Part 2. So I'm excited. You ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, man. Here we go. So, Kurt, this is what we refer to as the DIC episodes.
Okay.
And that was the production company that shifted in the early 90s.
Right. Did they also do like Hey Vern, It's Ernest?
Yeah, I think so.
Right.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. They did a lot of stuff because they were
Okay.
doing it all. It stood in the industry for do it cheap.
Okay.
So if that gives you a little tip.
Right.
So there's a lot of these, Kurt, this era that aren't looked very fondly upon by people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And I have to say, the first episode of this last week, I was very much I liked most of it, but there was a part of the show that I was very much against.
Okay.
And I'm very happy to say, spoiler alert, we'll try to keep until it's revealed in the show, that they proved me wrong.
Oh, all
so
right.
I'm going to walk that back.
Okay.
Because it turns out not to be. It was a feint. It was a bluff
Right.
for us viewers.
So you learned a little
Yeah,
something.
see, it was good.
You were quick to judge.
I was quick to judge. Yeah, I'm going to be a little more patient. So
Okay.
let's watch the previously on.
Okay.
We nabbed all the head snakes and toted them off to Alcatraz, where Metalhead said he saw the ghost of Alcatraz.
That's it right there.
Nobody believed him.
Okay.
Just like
The ghost of Alcatraz.
Sure.
Pathfinder when he said Cobra was up to something big. So guess what? Cobra took over Alcatraz.
And
captured
can I ask you a question?
Sure.
These were animated in the United States or in
Canada.
Canada.
These were done in Canada.
It
yeah.
looks like it's Canadian animation.
Previously, the previous guys were Sunbow, and they were an American company, but they farmed the animation to Japan.
Okay.
And the first couple seasons, the animation absolutely was great.
Okay.
Like in this one, it's just they were saving money, so it's
Right.
just like the frame rate's not as good.
Okay.
Like there's not as
Right.
much detail. It's not as rich, and
Right.
that's really the biggest difference.
Well, I think Canadian frame rates are different than the United States.
Yeah, they do. There's
I
an
mean,
exchange rate.
It's good.
Yeah, there's an exchange rate.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So when we left, Cobra had kidnapped that they called it the Comstock load, which was an EMP device. I know it's a weird name. It's a very strange name for a device. But I think they didn't want to kind of that's actually really cool. So Skydive, his plane got hit by the EMP, so he was crashing, but he was skidding on this force bubble that it had. And that was a
Right.
kind of a neat effect. I like
Right.
that a lot. This is a guy named Topside. That's a guy named Captain Gridiron.
Okay.
Which, if you pay close attention, he speaks entirely in football terms.
Okay.
So he's like, we got to make a pass and score this touchdown, gang.
Right.
It's delightfully charming.
Okay.
Yeah, it's delightfully charming. So they got to regroup and go after Cobra. They're stealing a bunch of sailboats to try to catch up with this submarine, because the submarine, its propellers were injured, so that's what's allowing them to catch
Okay,
up with
all right.
it. So it's not just taking off. Although if you've seen the Fast and the Furious movie, that submarine moves so fast.
Oh,
like the one on the ice.
Okay.
Like part 8, I think.
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh,
Okay.
it chases cars driving 70, 80 miles an hour on ice, and it is keeping up with them and catches up to them.
Right.
So this is not a Fast and the Furious
Okay.
submarine by any stretch.
All right.
So, Kurt, what kind of cartoons were you into when you were 10? Your parents didn't hook you up with the G.I. Joe. Like, were you playing? What kind of toys, or what did you have back then?
Like sticks and mud.
What was like Lincoln Logs or
Well, we had some Tinker Toys.
Tinker Toys, yeah.
And I had a couple trucks.
Yeah. It was right before the real branded era of Star Wars stuff hit.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Oh,
like
well.
it was early 70s. So it was like 2 or 3 years before.
Oh,
Here's
absolutely.
your Star Wars toys.
Yeah,
Like,
so-
you're a Star Trek fan.
Yes, TOS, the original series.
Yes. And how much Star Trek material was out there back then?
That was few and far between, and what you had was kind of crappy compared to what's available today. Yes.
Didn't they just take? I was watching this on that wonderful Toys That Made Us documentary. Didn't they just take other space age kind of toys and slap Star Trek stickers on them?
Some of them they did, I believe. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I had the tracer gun which had the little discs, and
Uh-huh.
I think that was something else. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I love that tracer gun. But yeah, they just put a picture of Leonard Nimoy and William Shatner on there, and I'm like, I must have this. So yeah, I don't want to give the impression that my parents didn't get anything.
Oh,
but I mean,
no,
they had
no,
a couple
not at all.
things.
Not at all. Not at all. So what? As a Star Trek fan, have you worked on a Star Trek property at all?
I've worked not legally. I've done a couple of Star Trek fan films, and I got hooked up with these guys, men and women, who have recreated the sets of the original series perfectly.
Wow.
And it's quite stunning to walk around those sets because it's like you're on the Enterprise.
Yeah.
It's, so yeah, I've done a couple.
Where are they based out of?
The ones that I've worked for are in upstate New York.
Are there multiple people that have recreated?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. There's sets down in Georgia, and there were sets in Oklahoma, I believe, and the sets in Ticonderoga, New York, those are licensed through Paramount.
Okay.
And they have they've recreated the sets, as I said, and they have a tour. You pay money, and you have it's officially licensed tour of the sets, the same way they were in back in the '60s at Desilu and Paramount. But Viacom, CBS, Paramount, whoever owns the rights, has really clamped down on Star Trek fan films, and so I don't know if the other sets outside of Ticonderoga, New York, are still existing.
Yeah,
My answer is I don't know.
But they're partnered with that one so that they're able to legit.
The people in Ticonderoga, they've got they're full on legit.
Yeah, they probably gave him a cut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah. That's really cool though.
Yes.
The Star Trek fandom is just so awesome. Awesome. And as the Star Wars fandom, which I allied myself more as a Star Wars guy.
Right.
As the Star Wars fandom gets larger and older, we are going the opposite direction of Star Trek fandom. Like
Right.
Star Wars fandom is getting uglier and uglier.
Right.
And I hope that some of the optimism and sense of community that Star Trek has rubs off on the Star Wars people.
It might. I know I've had some odd experiences at Star Trek conventions because you had the original series and then the other series which came along, which were great, which expanded the base, as it were. But I was at a convention years ago, and for example, William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, the original cast was on stage. No, I got it wrong. I'm sorry. The Next Generation cast was on stage, and the room was filled with people. And then they were done, and they said, "Okay, coming up will be members of the original series." And like half the audience gets up and walks out. The younger people get up and walk out because they don't really know the original series. And I was,
It's a dagger to the heart.
yeah, and did someone just kick me in the head with a metal boot?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So on the show, we've got the guys are going in on a glider because they can't get close enough in electronics because that EMP generator is going to knock them out.
Makes sense.
So the Sky Patrol, which is the G.I. Joe air specialists, they're flying in on a glider. This makes total sense. And that's Gridiron. He's going to leap off in a parachute and land on Alcatraz.
Okay.
To try to stop, because Cobra's still based out of Alcatraz.
Okay.
That's Metalhead, who is portrayed as a dope. He's the one who believes there's a ghost.
Okay.
And we're going to commercial and be right back.
Okay.
Today's file card features on the G.I. Joe Sky Patrol Recon Scout, codenamed Altitude. His file name is John Edward O. Jones. His primary military specialty is Sky Patrol Recon Scout. His secondary specialty is the Combat Artist. His birthplace is Cambria, California. He's a grade E9 as Sergeant Major of the Army. Being a full-blooded Apache Indian and the son of a famous Hollywood stuntman, Altitude had a lot to live up to. Altitude was gifted with both a photographic memory and a talent for drawing. After his budding artistic career in the animation industry was shortened by the collapse of syndicated cartoon programming, he decided to embark on a new career in the military. He's the first G.I. Joe ever to combine two totally different specialties, reconnaissance and combat artistry, and make them work. Quote, "The principal job of a scout is to bring back information. The more detailed the information, the better. Altitude can sneak up on an enemy installation, thoroughly observe it for a few days, and not even be spotted. After he has gathered enough information, he quietly leaves his observation post to return to headquarters. Once there, he uses recall abilities to sketch the installation in exact detail. He is so good that the Sky Patrol uses his sketches instead of maps because they're that precise." Okay, I'm way down with these sub-teams. The first one did not blow my skirt up. Battle Force 2000, not a huge fan of it. But Sky Patrol as far as like getting a bunch of sub characters in a theme group, I like quite a bit. They're like the Stunticons or the aerial bots of G.I. Joe. His look is kind of peculiar. It doesn't scream like a skydiver. It's green and brown primarily, but he comes with a sweet visor. It's got a missile launcher, and the cool thing about all the members of Sky Patrol is they came with silver parachutes, and G.I. Joe had actual functional parachutes. You put the backpack on them, and you could literally drop them from your second story, third story, etc. floor. I used to throw my Sky Striker parachutes out the window constantly. I'm a fan. I love that he's a combat artist. They use it in the cartoon. I believe next week's episode has him using his artistry skills. I think Sky Patrol. Well, we're going to talk more about Sky Patrol. We're going to be doing that for the next 5 weeks of G.I. Joe, guys. I'm all for altitude. John Edward Jones, we salute you. And Metalhead's big thing is he fires his weapons by saying the word bang. So he screams, bang, bang. And it's quite obnoxious. Some would say it's charmingly obnoxious.
Right.
Not this broadcaster.
Okay.
Oh, that's great. So, did you work on a production? Like, what did you play in that Star Trek production?
Oh, I played the big one I did was I played Captain Pike.
Great.
So, and they built the wheelchair for me and everything, and I played Captain Pike before the accident and after the accident. And I'm very happy they allowed me to keep my costume. So I have a very, very nice original series costume with the sparkle pants.
Wow, that's great. Do you wear it to Star Trek shows and stuff? Like,
no,
just to hang out in?
I'm not that big a nerd.
Do you still fit in it?
Oh,
that's
yes,
the important thing.
I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I imagine as a costume guy,
right,
you have to keep yourself in like the same size, like fit shape.
It helps. Yes.
You got to watch it at all times.
Right.
Yeah, because otherwise you're going to eat yourself out of a job.
Yes.
Literally.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Metalhead is still worried about the ghost. We have not yet learned that it may or may not actually be a ghost.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So at this point in watching this, I'm still very angry with half of this episode.
Okay. All right.
The rest of it, though, is pretty great because it's just we're getting like this showcase on Sky Patrol and all these toys, like just like a warfare kind of showcase on them, which is pretty delightful.
And now, can I ask you a question about?
Yeah.
Do these episodes usually have some kind of moral at the end of the to teach children?
They did as a stinger. And here we go. Here is a creepy looking, probably using Alcatraz, or probably like an old murderer, quite frankly.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is the guy this is the quote ghost of Alcatraz.
Okay.
It's an old inmate who's been living on the island for at least 25 years.
Right.
Alcatraz was decommissioned in 1963.
Okay.
Yeah. See, there you go. Speedy Brown. So he's been living there this whole time. If he was in Alcatraz in the first place, it means he was not a very nice guy.
I'm assuming.
No,
yes.
not a very nice guy. So that's what redeems it for me.
Okay.
That's what makes it okay for me because
Okay.
now it's not a ghost because it's
Right.
glad it's not a ghost. Right. So you asked, was it
Like the morals.
the morals? Yes. So they used to do they called PSAs, public service announcements.
Right.
They were like 30-second, 40-second shorts.
Mm-hmm.
At the end, a kid would be driving down the street on their bicycle, and they'd come across an open electrical wire.
Right.
And they'd be like, "Hey, go pick it up." And then the kid would be about to picking it up, and Roadblock would pull up in a
Okay.
Jeep and be like, "Hey, kids, don't pick that up! Like, don't be stupid! Like,
Right.
Call the police!" Or some kid would be swimming, and they'd be tomfoolery and be like,
Right.
"Don't fool around when you're swimming. Someone could drown and die." And then,
Right.
guy would
Okay.
show up.
All right.
And then they would always end up with, "Well, now I know, Roadblock," and he'd retort with, "And knowing is half the battle." G.I. Joe. Yes. So they always
Okay.
and that's how they ended these, and that was to help with the parental
Okay.
organizations,
Right.
That this wasn't just a way to sell toys, but
Wait,
we're going to teach the kids a moral lesson.
What, are you telling me they make these cartoons to sell toys in a way?
I know I can hear your heart breaking.
What?
From across the room.
What?
Yes.
I never would have thought
This
of
was
that.
a massive vehicle to sell millions and millions of dollars of toys. You're absolutely right.
Okay.
Yeah,
all
yeah.
right.
As started by He-Man a couple of years earlier.
He-Man.
Yeah, He-Man.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it started by He-Man.
Okay.
So the Joes have broken out of their prison, which is great. Pathfinder and Captain Gridiron is breaking everyone out.
Right.
So now we get an old school escape from Alcatraz going on.
Okay. Now, does this woman in this episode, does she ever take her glasses off?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I don't believe so. But you know what's funny? Usually when there's a woman on the show, now the show's always had a good history of representation,
Right.
of
Wasting time.
female characters and also female Joes and minorities and things like that.
Okay.
On the DIC years, there's usually not a lot of female characters. Just
Right.
the toy line didn't have a lot of
Okay.
female.
Oh no, Cobra has stripped
With
the
seeing her
armory.
on this episode, I just assumed she was going to be a Cobra in disguise. Because
Right,
that's the other
okay.
thing they do. It's if there's a female, she'll pull it off and it'll be the Baroness,
Right.
or it'll be Zorana or something.
Okay.
And luckily she's not. She is who she represents
Mm-hmm.
herself as. She's the like the warden of Alcatraz. Like she runs Alcatraz. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And in this universe, Alcatraz, I don't believe, has been decommissioned all that long. Because
Okay.
she's still considered like the head of Alcatraz.
Okay, like she had to
Yeah.
make sure that all the files get taken out
Yeah,
of the filing
yeah.
cabinets
Yeah.
before they.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. She's
Okay.
like she's the wholesalers at Toys R Us, making sure everything gets sold down to
yes.
the last shelf.
We've got
Right.
to knock out
Yeah.
that PM generator.
So does your geekdom, nerddom, fandom extend to like collectibles and toys or comic? Like, is there anything even in like Star Trek world, or is there something?
Yeah,
you're-
I have a couple of I have a tricorder from Master Replicas,
Sweet.
and I've got a couple of communicators and a phaser because I wanted the gear from watching the show when I was a kid, and the gear that was available when I was a child was not.
This is
Well, we're going to commercial and be right back. Hey listeners, I'm not sure if you've heard the news, but Joe and Joe has started a Patreon, and I'm inviting you along for the ride. Go to patreon.com/JoeandJoePod and check out my page. Right now, there are 2 opportunities for you to help support the show. You can choose to be a grunt or a viper. Grunts get access to all the Joe and Joe episodes and early access to new episodes as they're created. Vipers get all that and access to my all-new spin-off podcast, Joe and Joe Illustrated, where I will be breaking down every single issue of the G.I. Joe comic books page by page in the deepest dive you'll ever hear on G.I. Joe. So go to patreon.com/JoeandJoePod and see what's happening over at the Fort Wadsworth Motor Pool. We'll see you there. Good old Speedy just done sold him out. So what did I say earlier? He's a criminal.
Right.
He's been living there for 25 years. He was put there for a reason.
Yes.
And he just ratted the Joes out and sold them out to Cobra.
To you, Speedy Brown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
thanks,
Cobra's entire
Speedy.
plan hinges on Speedy Brown, a geriatric
Right.
criminal.
And so Speedy is kind of like he's the ghost of Alcatraz, kind of like the Phantom of the Opera, but
Yes.
but
You know what? You're 100% right.
Right.
I'm sure that's what they were going for.
Okay.
They do like, I mean, the writers were very talented, well-read
Sure.
people, and they've made allusions to
Okay.
things like that. So yes, I'll bet you that's what they were going for.
right, but it's not going to be a musical, you know.
No, no, now and forever. No,
Okay.
that's Cats. That was Cats. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Cats.
The engine room. Sky Patrol.
Who was famous for Phantom of the Opera?
Oh darn it! I know Michael.
Not Michael Flatley.
No.
Anyway, he was in a major geek cred show years before he got
Okay.
famous in Phantom of the Opera, and I'm blanking on it. It's probably terrible podcasting to answer a question neither of us know the answer to,
yes.
but there is some weird connection there. So turns out Speedy Brown was just fooling anyway.
Oh.
He did it to save the Joes because they
Okay.
were going to be outnumbered, and
Right.
so he saved them by not getting them shot.
Okay.
They now come closer to Cobra because now they're taken prisoner.
Right.
And then once they're prisoner, he now frees them. So it turns out Speedy Brown, he's an all right kind of guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he was rehabilitated then.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm getting shades of the wonderful late lamented show Last Man on Earth with when they ran into the Fred Armisen character, who was the serial killer that was stuck in the prison during the apocalypse.
Right.
And they find him, and he's just like, "Hey guys," and they don't know that he's a cannibal murderer.
Right.
Yeah, that's Speedy Brown in this episode.
Okay.
So, Kurt, one of the things we like to do on my show is we like to talk and ask our guests if you could be a member of the G.I. Joe team or of the Cobra team.
Yes.
What would you be? Would you be a good guy, a bad guy? What would your specialty be? How would you help the cause? And then let's get a code name for you.
Okay. I would want to be a good guy,
Okay.
and I think like my special skill would be deception. I could portray someone else. Like I could be made to look like just like a bad guy, and I can walk like they do, and I can talk like they do. And I think my name would be Mask, but you'd have to say my name like this. Mask.
MASQUE. Can we call it?
Yes. Mask. And it would stand for man, always surprising, queering.
Underworld elements.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I love that. You're the Joe's answer to Zartan. Zartan, are you familiar with who that is?
You're going to have to please educate me.
He was the Cobra Master of Disguise. So what you just described, and listeners, Zartan's a massive character.
Okay.
He's a well-known character. He's one of the major bad guys. As Kurt, as you were describing that, I know listeners are hearing, oh, he's describing Zartan.
Okay.
You have no idea who Zartan is.
I believe
Yeah. So you're the answer to Zartan.
Okay.
So the Joes never really came up with that.
Right.
The closest they had maybe was like Chuckles, who was their undercover guy. Yeah, he was a silly name, but they redeemed him in the comic books.
Okay.
But he was like an undercover, like Don Johnson, Magnum PI kind of guy. But he
Right.
wouldn't like go full mask. You're going full mask.
Oh, yeah.
You're going full
Exactly.
subterfuge.
Right.
So you're the response to Zartan, named Mask with a QUE.
Yeah.
I love it.
Right.
I
And maybe,
love it.
Yeah, maybe M period A period,
Yeah. Well, we gotta look out because there was a toy line called Mask.
Oh, really?
In the 80s, that was M period A period S period K period.
Oh,
And
okay.
it stood for Mobile Armored Strike Command.
Of course.
Yeah, and they were basically was the synthesis of G.I. Joe and Transformers.
Right.
So it was G.I. Joe size action figures that fit into their cars, and then their cars would go from like a Camaro to a jet, or a jet to a tank.
That is pretty cool.
Is pretty great.
Yeah.
And then they're all currently owned. It was a different company back then. I think it was Kenner. Now they're all owned under Hasbro. So Hasbro has control. So they've actually done crossover continuities in the comics
Right.
with G.I. Joe and Mask and stuff. So we
Okay.
definitely have to keep you with a Q.
Okay,
And
got
I
it.
think we have to drop the periods. I think it's just we gotta go Mask.
I will bow to your expertise.
Because I think there's just too much confusion out there in the world.
Yes.
I love it. Mask, welcome to the Joe and Joe Squad.
Thank you.
Deep Dish welcomes you aboard. So what's on the horizon that we can look out for you?
I'm not sure if I worked on a movie a couple years ago, and I was in the theater, and I saw a trailer for this movie. And I said, "Oh yeah, I worked on this movie," but I'm not sure if I'm going to be in it or not. I only worked a day on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Unfriended: The Dark Web.
Looks scary.
Yeah, so that's the next thing that I have coming out, and I'm waiting for another film I worked on called Crabs, about crabs that kill people, and I play a crab that kills people.
Humanoid sized crabs.
You know what? I don't want to ruin it, but
Okay.
it's I play a crab that kills people, and then I don't want
Okay.
to give away the ending.
Okay, I love that. Is that going like VOD or is that going?
My answer is I don't know.
Okay.
Of course, I'm not in charge of when the movie comes
Sure,
out.
sure.
But I'm looking forward to seeing it. Believe me, because I've never been a crab before on film, and so I'm looking forward to seeing myself.
That's exciting. Was there now in the era of CG monsters and stuff?
Yeah.
Have you done like straight mocap stuff?
Absolutely.
Like
Oh, yeah,
Andy
yeah,
Serkis kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I used to be on. I did several episodes of Starship Troopers,
Oh, cool.
and that's a lot of fun because it's really fast work, and you're playing a 8-legged insect in for one take, and then the next take you're playing a woman walking down a hallway. It's a lot of fun.
And it's got to be great as an actor to just be able to change your physicality,
Yeah.
and then see it represented
Immediately.
Yes,
Yes. Right. Yeah. That is. I really enjoy doing motion capture a lot. Yeah.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Well, I'm excited. So the Joes, they have bested Cobra. Shockingly enough,
Okay.
the Joes won.
Right.
And Cobra is escaping on like an escape pod. They're all
Okay.
4 of them crammed into this tiny little pod.
There's one good thing about this.
And here we go, Metalhead.
The ghost of Alcatraz can't get me now.
Oh God, he's so dumb. He's so dumb. He's so dumb. Like and that's the I part. That's I can't stomach that. But this is great. We get a little coda, and this is like
Now let me see.
this is like something out of like Shawshank,
Gosh,
where
you'd better find
Speedy
the
Brown
Pathfinder. Somebody might use it to escape.
doesn't. I don't. You see, yeah, Speedy Brown's escaping, and Warden's not very happy with it.
Stop that now.
Right.
You can't let a prisoner escape like that.
That prisoner is no longer a prisoner. We got the governor to pardon Speedy as a gift for helping us defeat Cobra.
Meanwhile, Speedy Brown could be like a cannibal.
Right.
Who knows what Speedy Brown did, right? We don't know what Speedy Brown did.
All his records were lost in that horrible fire.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Yeah. Like,
San Francisco, here I come.
Yeah.
Right back where I started from.
do you hear the ominous music?
I do. I was just going to say that. Yes.
Seriously, the Joes just unleashed a serial killer into San Francisco. I don't know how responsible that is.
Well,
They're showing an alarming lack of responsibility here. The music 100% took a dark turn in that moment.
it was a minor key, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Whoever did that is brilliant. Thank you so much for doing that. That is so subversive and fantastic.
Yeah.
So fantastic.
Well, maybe it opens them up for another storyline down the road or something.
Yeah. The return of Speedy Brown. I want listeners. I need someone to at the next JoeCon next year, or Joe Fest, I believe, is the one that can be for 2019. Someone needs to cosplay as Speedy Brown, just with blood all over you. Just you're Speedy Brown of today,
Right.
and you've racked up a body count.
Yes.
Like,
yes. And please use that voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, San Francisco, here I come.
Oh my goodness gracious. Well, Kurt, so is this your first episode of G.I. Joe that you
This
watched?
is the first episode I've ever watched. Thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you so much. What'd you think?
I loved it, and because when this was in its heyday. Well, let me ask you: Are they still producing GI Joe episodes?
No, unfortunately, no.
Okay.
No, yeah, this would have been like this would have aired, I think, like 91.
Okay.
So you were still in the throes of Little Shop. Maybe.
I was I was doing it somewhere around. I think I was in Texas doing it.
Yeah.
But no, I loved it, and I could see how if I was of the right age, that I would be totally tuned into it. Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. There's a lot. I think there's a lot of similarities. We've talked a lot over the course of doing this podcast between shows like this and Star Trek and those shows where everyone's on a team. They all have similar uniforms.
Yeah.
And they're all fighting for the same kind of goal or striving for the same goal and stuff too. So I think there's a similar fandom there. So I think that's great. Well, Kurt, thank you so much for being a part of this, man.
You are welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, this was a real delight. So everyone make sure you check out Kurt at kurtcarley.com. Go to his IMDb page, give him that big bump, and look for him in Unfriended Dark Web. He's a guy with a mask, scary-looking guy with a mask over his face, and be on the lookout for crabs. And now you, Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.